Hey guys, a little while ago I forged this knife out of a piece of some scrap steel I had lying around. The person that bought this knife wanted me to etch an elk, some mountains, and a tree on it. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. And I'll be showing the process I used to etch the blade. So the first thing we need to do is get our template. So you can go over to Google, type elk SVG, and that'll give you a whole bunch of stuff. And usually it's going to have you go to Etsy, which is where I recommend going. You can use one of the free ones, but the ones you pay for are a lot better. Then you're not stealing anyone's work. So type in elk SVG on here, and it'll give you a whole bunch that you can choose from. And this is what I like to do. You get better quality, and you're paying for what you want. It only costs you $1 to $2. Some of them are a little bit more. And you can use it for anything. Type in trees. I already have some that I've bought, so I'm not going to use any of these, but I just want to show you how many you can get. And it's like $2, and you get a whole bunch of different trees. So this is the way that I would go. Okay, so now we've got our design on here. And if you don't have a Cricut, you can just use electrical tape and cut it out and do it the same way. The Cricut does make it a lot easier. I do have problems with the Cricut, but I don't have a laser engraver yet, so this is the best thing I've found so far. And it does take a while to cut it out. This design, I think, took about 30 minutes. Alright, so after it cuts it, this is what it's going to look like. So now we have to weed it out. You want to make sure you have a lot of patience for the small parts. My wife usually does this for me. She's a lot better, a lot more patient than I am. The trees are easy and the mountains are easy parts, but when you get to the elk, there's a lot of little designs in there that make it difficult. So you just want to take your time. And this is a really important part. This is the transfer tape. And if you have letters or small parts, they can get messed up as you transfer it to the blade. So the transfer tape helps it just stick all together. And I use a 12-volt battery. This has worked really well for me. And I just attach the red clip onto the blade. And I use a railroad spike. I use the flat part to actually do the engraving. I just stick a cotton ball on there. Now for the mixture, I just use salt. I'm going to be using 2 tablespoons. Before I do that, we got to transfer the design over to the blade. I just use the roller. You can just use your hand if you don't have one of these, just to make sure everything is really tight so you don't lose anything. So before I actually put the design on the blade, I want to make sure it's really clean. You don't want any dust or oil from fingerprints or anything else on the blade. So I just use some rubbing alcohol and clean it off. And you can also use Windex or anything else to clean it. So next part, you want to go really slow. You've got to separate the backing. Sometimes it's difficult to get the backing to peel away. And you also want to make sure you're not taking the transfer tape off just yet, so just the white backing right now. And on this part, I go really slow and I press down as I'm unrolling it. If you go too fast, parts can get stuck onto the backing and you'll lose them. And if you do see a little piece on the white, you can go backwards and then do it again. And I do have this happen on part of the elk, so I'll show that in a minute. And as I actually get to the design, I'm putting a little bit extra pressure and just make sure you go really slow. Right now I'm on the elk and I just saw a little bit of the blue. Looks like a piece of the antler is stuck to the white. So now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go backwards and press down, and then I'm going to repeat it and just putting extra pressure as I unroll it and going really slow. Now I'm past the piece and it's not on the white, so it's stuck back in position. And if you have pieces that you just can't get, sometimes you have to use really small tweezers and put them back yourself. But if you go slow, this doesn't usually happen. So here's what it looks like. Everything's on there. It's kind of hard to see in the camera. So now we got to put it on, and you want to make sure you put it on as straight and right where you want it. 'Cause if you mess up on this part and you try and rip it off, it'll get really stuck and it cause creases in the transfer tape, and you'll just have to redo it. So just go really slow on this part as well. And once you get it on, make sure it's really tight. And now you can peel off the transfer tape. This part, usually you don't have any issues with it. I still go pretty slow when I do it, but it's not as important as the first time you put it on. I have a lot of excess paper. I like to have a little bit more, so if water drips from the cotton balls, it's not going to get on any part of the blade I don't want it to be. So I like to have a little bit of extra transfer tape. So for the mixture, I have a half a cup of hot water to help dissolve the salt. And I use 2 tablespoons. I found this dissolves almost all the salt. If you have a little bit left over, that's okay. You just want to make sure most of that dissolves. And there's just a little bit left in the bottom, and that's perfect. I know there's enough salt in there. So now I attach the red clip onto the blade, and it does have to be directly on the steel. And the black clip goes onto the railroad spike, and then just press on the cotton ball, and I get most of the water out. There's a little bit still in there. You can hear it sizzling as I'm pressing down. I'm just pressing 2 to 3 seconds each time. I have burnt through before. I just like to make sure I don't do that so I don't press too hard and for too long. And after I press down, I also kind of blot it out. Right after you use the cotton ball, it'll be really dark. So if you press down a little bit, it'll soak some of that up, and it'll be easier to clean in the end. So after I've gone over it a few times, then I can peel it off, and you don't need to be careful. I do just like to make sure it etched, and then you can just rip it right off. After I wash it in hot, soapy water, then I like to use WD-40 just to make sure there's no rust, since this is a high carbon steel blade. It just adds another layer of protection. After it's all done, here's what it looks like. And you can also use a high grit sandpaper, go over it one more time, just a really light brush with the sandpaper to help reveal it a little bit better. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video or if it helped you out, hit the like button, and I'll see you in my next video.